1981 for one of the big congress in dynamical systems. And it was also the opportunity for the moment of the inauguration of this building here. Actually, I visited the old one in the center of the city, but I never worked there, and so I started my relationship with IMPA coincides in a sense with this building here. I've been here many, many times, and I've spent something like 4 years, if you sum over many stays here. And a large part of my work is really related to this institution, so I'm really happy to be there today. So what I will talk about is actually strongly related to IMPA2. It's a joint work with Jaakko Pallis. And the cool subject is homoclinic bifurcations. Is very strongly related to IMPA. Actually, most or perhaps all of the main results in this subject have been worked out there, at least in collaboration with people here. So what is non-uniformly hyperbolic dynamics? It's essentially the dynamics of stretching pinching. So if I would stop here, I would actually have the uniformly hyperbolic dynamics, a theory which has been worked out in the 60s and is in a more or less complete and definitive way, not completely, but in a rather complete way. But what you put, the ingredients that you put for having non-uniformly hyperbolic dynamics, you put also some folding. And this is what makes life much more complicated in this case than in the uniformly hyperbolic one. But on the other hand, it lets you hope to understand more and dynamical systems than in the uniform hyperbolic case. At the moment, there is no complete theory, no at least even real coherent theory of this non-uniformly hyperbolic dynamics. There is only a number of case studies. And the talk that I'm given today is the work with Pallis, is one more step in this direction. So the case studies, to be brief, that I just give names, just to indicate. Well, you have the uniformly hyperbolic situation on one side, the non-uniformly hyperbolic situation on the other. And the easiest context is the one-dimensional context, where you consider an expanding map. Say, to give an example, it could be the just doubling a map from the circle of itself of degree larger than 1, and with derivative everywhere larger than 1, like theta gives 2 theta, or perturbation of this map. So this first easiest case, say, of uniformly hyperbolic map. And the corresponding case on the other side is the celebrated Jacobson's theorem. I won't try to recall what it is. But it's, it's in the family of real quadratic polynomials, that the fact that for positive probability on the parameter, you have a hyperbolic critical orbit and even absolutely continuous invariant measure with a positive Lyapunov exponent. Now, in the next case, in a sense, you can consider what the objects which are called hyperbolic attractors. Perhaps the most well-known is the solenoid, but you have also the so-called derived from Anosov for surfaces. Solenoid is an attractor in 3 dimensions. On the corresponding objects have been studied by a number of people, starting with Benedicts and Carlson, and then Viana, Young, and Morin, Viana, and Young. But let me come to the objects that I'm interested in. So we have the next kind of objects are the horseshoes, which were first considered by Smale, and which are on the opposite that attractors here, which are objects with a saddle-like behavior, meaning that the stable set, the set of points which converge under positive iteration to the invariant set, has empty interior, and even Lebesgue measure 0, and the same for the unstable set. So this is objects that I will study here, that I will try to present in a very schematic way, in our way with Pallis. And there is a last kind of example, is the Anosov case. The Anosov case is when the full manifold is hyperbolic, so it's in a sense it's both these two cases at the same time. The Anosov case, and in this, on the other side here, we have a complete, there is a candidate, which is the so-called standard map. But this is just a candidate. I mean, there are question marks. At the moment, it's completely unknown. This is a reasonable model for the non-uniformly hyperbolic dynamics in the fully hyperbolic situations. Okay, so this is the kind of object that I want to talk about. So these objects will occur in the context of homoclinic bifurcation. And let me just I will just look at, as I said, the case studies. So let me just look at a concrete situation. The concrete situation that I want to consider is the following one. So I will have two fixed points. So it's a non-completely standard horseshoe to begin with, because it has two special fixed points, one which is here and the other which is here. So, and I've drawn here this is the stable manifolds and the unstable manifolds. No, sorry. But this stable and unstable manifold here have a transverse intersection, but in some other place, at this point here, we'll have a quadratic tangency. And they go on, these two manifolds go on. I mean, I have so what you see here is at the same time you have, if you consider a square like that, this square R, you get a perfectly standard hyperbolic horseshoe considering, so let's say that the map if F, it's a map, it's a diffeomorphism of a surface. What surface is not important because I will just look at a local picture. So in the surface, I have a square R with the dynamics which look like what I have drawn. And the horseshoe that I'm starting with is the intersection, the maximal invariant set inside this square R that you have seen here. So let me call K this maximal invariant set. But outside of the square R, so not inside this set here, I have also this tangency Q between the stable manifold of PS and the unstable manifold of Q here. So here I have drawn what is the first image of F, and here the inverse image of F. And so if you iterate more, this will go to in positive time to PS, and this will go in negative time to PU. Okay, so what I'm interested in is to consider some small Neff-Borud V of Q here, and some perturbation So this will appear in a moment, but some perturbation G of F in the space of diffeomorphisms of the manifold. So F is the diffeomorphism I started with, and it had some tangency, quadratic tangency at Q, and then I will perturb F to some G, and what I'm interested in is to consider the maximal invariant set inside not only R, as I started, but in the larger set. So this is just a definition. So the maximal invariant set in R union V. I have only to consider V just one component here because in my concrete situation, the image of Q is inside R and all images are inside R. So I mean the only point in the orbit which is outside R is indeed Q. Okay, so what can I say at the beginning with a kind of trivial observation is that by the implicit function theorem, this tangency here defines in the set of diffeomorphism an hypersurface that I will call U0. So this U0 is just the set of diffeomorphism which exhibit the same kind of quadratic tangency near Q. And this hypersurface will divide the neighborhood of F into two pieces. A piece U minus where you don't see any intersection near Q, so it will look like that, and a piece U plus where you get two transverse intersections near Q between these pieces of the stable manifold of PS and unstable manifold of PU. Now, what are the consequences of this situation for this set? Well, they are pretty obvious. It means that if the two stable and unstable manifolds do not intersect like in this picture, it means that if you go through V, if some orbit goes through V, actually it will go outside R in the afterwards, or in the negative time, either one or the other. So it means that actually for G in U minus, meaning before bifurcation, if you want, if you think of the two manifolds are crossing at the bifurcation time, then actually lambda G is just the maximal invariant set in R, so it is a uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe. On the other side, for G in U0, so in particular if G is equal to the initial diffeomorphism F, then lambda G, in all cases, obviously, it will contain the horseshoe. But in this case, it will contain the horseshoe, but you will just have one orbit aided, which is the orbit of the tangency point, which is defined by the fact that you belong to U0. So the interesting case is the case where G is in U plus, because in this case you will get this small intersection. If you belong to lambda G, if some orbit belongs to lambda G and goes through V, then it has actually to go through this intersection here. But now it's a non-trivial set, so you can have a set which certainly contains and is strictly larger than Kg, but the set that we want to analyze. So what we want to analyze, if I'm doing, in a sense, this picture, but reformulating this picture in a simpler way, in a sense, is the following. I have the rectangle R, and inside I have first the part which is related to the initial horseshoe K. So these are the two components of the intersection of R with its image, with its inverse image. And then I have the image of these two. So this is G of R0, G of R1, which correspond to the two connected components of the intersection of R. So R is a large rectangle with its image. Now, if I had only that, I would have just the uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe F. Now, if I want to take V into account, assuming that now G is in U plus, so I'm in this situation, I have just to draw the image and the inverse image of this piece here. And what I get is a piece which is here and looks like that. So this is something that I will call LU, and a piece which is around here and looks like that. And this piece I will call LS. And this LS is just the image of this one by two iterations. By two iterations of the map through the V, but I will not draw V. I do not need that. So I have actually three maps here. The map from R0 to its image, this match here that I could call G0. Then the map from R1 to its image, which I could just call R1. And finally, so these two maps are very hyperbolic in the usual sense. The vertical direction is contracted and the horizontal direction is expanded. And I have the folding map, which is the G, which corresponds to two iterates of small g, and which takes place in a very small region. If I'm close to bifurcation, this width here of this parabolic tongue here is actually the distance from the hyperplane here. Okay, so this is the situation that I want to look at. Now, it's well known since the celebrated work of Newhouse that you have no hope to understand the dynamics or the geometry of this invariant set for all diffeomorphism in U plus. And so, and I will say in a moment why, but that you have to restrict to, to understand, so the problem is to understand the dynamics of most, and I will explain G in U plus of lambda G. So first, what means most? And second, why you have to restrict to most? So this most here means that if I'm considering any parameter family transverse to this hypersurface, so let's call Ft and assume that it is parameterized in the natural way, meaning that parameter 0 is at the intersection here, positive parameter in U plus and negative 1 in U minus, then you want to understand, so you will say that you understand the dynamics of most parameters if the set of good T in 0 epsilon as Lomeg measure which has a relative density 1 when epsilon goes to 0. So this is most parameter in this sense. The relative density goes to 1 as epsilon goes to 0 as you go close to the tangency hypersurface U0. So this is the most. And now, why do you need such a restriction if you want to have a reasonable result? Well, this is, as I said, because of Newhouse phenomenon. He proved that as soon that you have such an homoclinic tangency, so if you are close to this, close to U0, there exists a V open in a U plus, which accumulates in on U0, and such that generically in U, V, G restricted to lambda G has infinitely many things. Alors, I forgot some hypothesis here. So I'll have to assume that Kf, the initial map, that the Jacobian of Fn at P is, say, less than 1 for some periodic orbit of F, n being the period of P. So assume that you have some periodic point, P, and I'm assuming that P is of period n. Obviously, P is its Kf. So assume that the initial horseshoe contains one periodic orbit, which is obviously of saddle type, but such that the Jacobian map of the corresponding iterate is smaller than 1. Then you have this. If you have obviously the thing in the opposite direction, then you will have infinitely many sources. Okay. So this is the reason, fortunately, this set V, we hope, and we are able to prove in many cases, but we hope that it's actually not too large. Actually, if at least if you make some hypotheses on the geometry of K, as I will explain. Okay, now what are the results concerning this problem? I want to come to the main part of my talk. So let me be rather short. To state the result, I need to introduce two geometric quantities, which are the transverse Hausdorff dimensions of the two foliations of the initial horseshoe. So of the stable foliation Ws of K in one case and W of K in the other. And actually the sum of the two is the Hausdorff dimension of the full horseshoe K. Now, with these two dimensions, which are numbers between 0 and 1, strictly, you first consider the result of Pallis-Takens, where you assume that the Hausdorff dimension of K, which is ds plus du, is less than 1, and then you conclude that for most G, lambda G is uniformly hyperbolic, I mean a standard horseshoe. Then there are two results, one by Pallis and myself, and the other, which is more sophisticated, by Moreira and myself, which says that this, if you assume that the Hausdorff dimension is larger than 1, then it is not true. I should be more precise, but I'm just saying the minimum with relation to what I want. It is not true that for most G, lambda G is a uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe. And the reason is that you have tangencies actually inside lambda G. You are considering just the initial foliation of S, Ws of K, and Wu of K, and you will get inside lambda G tangencies between these two foliations, which certainly make the impossible for lambda G to be a uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe. You need transversality. So finally, so the result that I want now to talk about by Pallis and myself is that assuming, so now I need something which is condition which is more complicated on the dimension, and this is the following. So assuming that ds plus ds square plus du square plus 2 ds du plus max ds du square is less, I will draw the condition that this one. Then actually lambda g is for most g, and the most is the same as that here. Most g non-uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe. So obviously this way the theorem is not helpful. I have to explain what is a non-uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe. And this is what I will try to do, at least some aspects of what is a non-uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe in the rest of the talk. Let me just comment something about this condition. Certainly this condition is not really optimal. I mean, it makes the proof work. The proof works, but in the space of dimension, ds and du, so the dimensions, both dimensions are between 0 and 1, so you have the unit square, and then the condition for Pallis-Takens, the sum of the dimension is less than 1, corresponds to this region. And now this condition, if you draw it, is something like that. Fine, it's all this set, but I mean this set is not interesting because you have a better result here. So I mean this result is only significant in this region where the sum is larger than 1, but this condition is still satisfied just to give this correspond to 3/5 on the diagonal. Okay, but this condition, I really don't think that it is that important. But we need some restriction in order to obtain such a control on lambda g. So let me just say at the moment, I will now try to describe what I mean by non-uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe. But let me just say right now that in particular it means that it's a saddle-like object. In particular, it will not contain any attractor. The stable set of this horseshoe will have empty interior, and actually even a dimension strictly less than 2. The same for the unstable set. So it's a saddle-like object with some uniform hyperbolic, some hyperbolicity, non-uniform. And well, you will have some tangency between stable and unstable manifold, at least for many parameters, which makes that it's not a uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe. It may be a uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe for some values of the parameter, but these values are not sufficient to get most g. If you want most g, you have to allow for this non-uniformly hyperbolic horseshoe. Okay, so I have to concentrate. I mean, there are two parts of the description of this horseshoe. There are features which are more on the dynamical or even ergodic theoretical side, meaning really the dynamics of this on this lambda g, and parts which are more on the geometrical side, try to describe the lambda g as an object. Geometrical object. I will concentrate today on the geometrical part, leaving the ergodic theoretical part or even the dynamics really outside of the picture. It's just a choice for the exposition because I have no time to do everything. Okay, so I start with this picture here, and I will have to introduce a number of concepts which will converge to this object lambda g there. So the first kind of things that I want to consider is what I call a fine light iterates. What is this? Well, it's just inside R. It's a triple P, Q, N, where P is some vertical-like strip inside R. And when I restrict G to the N to P, it will be a diffeomorphism on an horizontal-like strip that I call Q. So the data are the number of iterations, N, and then a domain for this number of iterations, which is a vertical-like strip P, and the image, which is a horizontal-like strip Q. I will also assume, but I don't want to write many inequalities. I will assume that the map really looks like an affine map that, just a linear contraction in the vertical direction and a linear expansion in the horizontal direction. I will just call this plus a condition that I will call bounded distortion. This has a precise definition, but I would spend 10 minutes to define this in a precise way, and I don't want to do that. Okay. So if you think of that, it has to look like the affine map, which would send a vertical strip to a horizontal one. Now, so this is what I call affine-like iterates. At this level, I just want to observe that if you have assume that you have two triples of this kind, with different iterates, then you have only three possibilities. Either I'm looking at the domains, but the same would be true for the image. And it's a good moment to say that everything that I will say is invariant under the change of time. I can reverse the time, change f to f-1 or g to g-1, and the description of the object will be the same. I have just to change the vertical for horizontals. And all the description is invariant under this change of time. So considering the p, but the same is true for the q's, then either the p are disjoint, or one is contained in another. So this corresponds to n larger than n prime, and this for the opposite. Okay, so you have only these three possibilities. Now, with this affine-like iterates, I can get new affine-like iterates. I have two ways to do that, a way that you are used to and a way which is specific to this kind of situation. So the next definition, if you want, is what I call simple composition. So simple composition is the ordinary composition. So I'm just drawing a picture. Assume that I have a first iterate Gn, and then the second one, Gn prime, with domain P, the first, and with image Q. And the next domain is P prime, and the image is Q prime. Obviously, I can take the intersection here, take it back here to get a very thin vertical strip here, and taking forward to take a very thin horizontal strip here. I will call this one P double prime, Q double prime, and the number of iterates is obviously the sum of the two. So this is simple composition, taking two affine-like iterates and getting a new one by composing. The other kind of composition is going through the tongues, LU and LS. Obviously, if I'm just sticking to this simple composition, I could start from these two maps G0 and G1, which will be a affine-like, just one iteration in the domains which are R0 and R1, and the image which are G of R0 and G of R1. Okay? But with simple composition, I will only be able to describe the initial horseshoe that I started with, and actually this is the way that we are used to describe this kind of horseshoe. But I want to describe the larger invariant set, which includes this composition, this going through V, which was outside, so which includes this map G here, which is the folding part of the dynamics. And so I need another kind of composition, which I call parabolic. And this was always possible, but the parabolic composition is subject to some transversality conditions that I will not go too much into. I will just make the drawing. So I start with the P, which is actually much thinner a priori, but I'm just drawing it big for simplicity region. Then the image, so again, I will draw this is the LU, which is actually very small, but I make it very large here for to be able to draw. And so the Q here should go through the LU for the parabolic composition to be defined, like that. So it's not any PQ, it's some PQ such that Q goes through LU. And then you iterate twice just by G to go to the LS, where the image, so this would be the image of Q. And now you have another affine Leakey iterate, P prime. So let's, like that. And the image of this P prime will be some Q prime still linear. So I have n iterates here, then n prime iterates here, and 2 iterates actually from LU to LS. Now, the transversality hypothesis is related to the relative position of this parabolic strip G of Q, the image of the horizontal one, so it has been folded here, with respect to the P prime. I could also draw the thing here, considering G minus 1 of P prime, just 2 iterates, so a bounded distortion between these two maps, between these two pictures. Okay? So what I am assuming is actually that the parabolic strip is crossing with 2 components like that, and even with some estimates that I don't want to write. So what I need is something that I will call like that, Q transverse to P prime, which is really transversality with estimates. It's not the usual, so it's a quantitative transversality. It is important to have some precise estimates if you want to keep bounded distortion in the composition. So if you have this kind of transversality that I'm not being precise about, what you are is now you have these 2 components here that you can take back here as being 2 small strips here and taking forward here. Those 2 that you call this one P plus, this one P minus, Q plus and Q minus. And so you get 2 new affine-like iterates. And the total number of iterates is the same for 2, n plus n prime plus 2 in the case. Okay, this kind of composition is the one that will allow me to analyze, help to analyze the maximal invariant set. It's not always helpful because I need this condition to be satisfied. That I have not been made precise, but obviously, if something is like that, this is no good. If this occurs, then I cannot allow the parabolic composition. Okay. Now, how would you use these two kind of objects? So, what you want to do is the following. First, you will consider a class of affine-like iterates. So this is the class which is obtained from the initial one. So it was Ri, G of Ri, and the number of iterations was 1. So you started with these two, which are by definition in this class, and then you make all possible simple and parabolic composition. Okay, so in particular, because simple composition is always allowed, it means that I will have in this set all the vertical and horizontal strips which are used in the analysis of the initial horseshoe. But I will get more because now and then I will have this parabolic composition allowed, so I will have more than the initial horseshoe. So this is a set of good iterates of the map. And then you go you will use this to define, in a sense, the nice part of the maximal invariant set lambda G, or even of its stable set. You introduce the concept of stable curve. It's a curve omega, which is just the intersection, the decreasing intersection of pi. So pi being the part of a triple Ni with, which belongs to this class R. And so the pi being by definition decreasing. So it means the corresponding Ni are increasing. And when you take thinner and thinner, so I will assume that they are distinct. So you will get thinner and thinner vertical-like strips, and the intersection will just be a curve that will cross the R in a vertical-like way. And you have the dual concept, an unstable curve. Well, for unstable curve, you will take the intersection of Qi. So you will get some Qg with here the Qg these times is contained in Qg minus 1. So some, this would be the omega prime, an unstable curve. So just from this class here. So at least what you get is the part of the stable foliation of the initial set K, which stays in the rectangle R. The foliation, the contour-like foliation, both horizontal for the stable one and vertical for the stable one and horizontal for the unstable one. So you have this stable curve and this unstable curve. Let me just give a name to the state of stable curves. And Ru for the other one. And this is where I'm just will forget a lot of the dynamics, because what we do, we consider this set of stable curves as a good set for positive iteration, and the same Ru as the good set for unstable iteration. Because what we're able to do is that to define some dynamics at the level of the union of stable curves. Actually, I'm just saying that because this is the part that I don't want to explain. You have inside Rs a set of strictly smaller. So this Rs, I should say, have some transverse Hausdorff dimension that I call ds tilde, which is close to ds, and the same Ru have some transverse Hausdorff dimension that I call du tilde, which are close to the initial dimension ds and du. And actually, on outside of a set of strictly positive codimension, there is some dynamics which is defined on RS and on RU also in the negative direction, and which is a Bernoulli kind of dynamics, I mean, very strongly hyperbolic dynamics. So, I mean, in a few words, all behave well on this set, as well on the geometrical side, because this is just a set of disjoint vertical curves, which will make some kind of foliations. And this is just a set of horizontal curves, which cross completely the set R. So this is, in a sense, the good part of the dynamics. So what I really want to explain in the last 10 minutes, something like that, yeah, rather 5, is how you what the exceptional set looks like. This is a nice set. What is the bad set? Well, I have to explain first what will be the restriction of the diffeomorphism. As I explained, there is no hope to understand lambda g for all g in U plus because of this Newhouse phenomenon. So you need some restriction on the diffeomorphism. What is the main qualitative restriction is the following. First, you will say, so it's a definition, say that S is a triple like that. You will say that P is fully decomposable if the following holds: the part of P which is contained in the maximal invariant set is actually the disjoint union of the part which is contained in P prime. The P prime should be part of a triple S prime, P prime, Q prime, N prime, with P prime smaller than P and distinct from P. Let me explain in the simplest case what happens. If I'm starting with R1, R1, the image of R1 is G of R1, but actually everything which does not escape but which is contained in G of R1 is contained either here or here. And then it means that you have two smaller strips whose image under two iterations are actually, under one iteration are this one, under two iterations are horizontal-like strips, and these two contains everything which is in lambda, which is already in R1. On the other side, it would not be true, the same would not be true for R0, because of this part here. If something is inside here, the image is here, so it may be here, or here, or here. But what is this does not correspond to any P prime like that. Okay, so this means that I can go to thinner strips without losing anything of lambda. And so the main restriction is the following. So it's a restriction on G. The main restriction is that for all S in this class that defined here, either P or Q is fully decomposable. Or both, I should say. I mean, it's not exclusive. But I want at least one of the two to be fully decomposable. So this is a strong restriction. And actually, if you try to analyze this condition, and you want this to be satisfied for most G, then you need this complicated condition of dimensions that I did write before. Okay? So this is a strong restriction on the diffeomorphism, and it's a condition on, in a sense, recurrence of a bad set that is called critical locus. That I'm not going into. But assuming that, assuming this condition, let me just try to explain in a few words how this allows to reduce the study of the geometry of lambda G to the geometry of these nice sets here, where the geometry is well under control. So I won't do much more than just a few drawings. So, as I explained, the RS corresponds to good positive iteration, because you are in the PI correspond to the domains of affine light iterates, and you are in the domains of PI for arbitrary large NI number of iterates. And RU corresponds to good negative iteration. So let me just explain in the set lambda which points have bad positive and bad negative iteration. I should also study, but I'm not doing that for lack of time, points which have good positive iteration and bad negative iteration. Just look at the case of bad and bad, bad in both positive and negative. So what I'm starting with lambda, and I will divide first in the vertical direction. So I will divide as long as I can. Let me just consider here when P is not fully decomposable, the difference here, minus this union that I've started here. So this is non-empty exactly when P is not fully decomposable. So when P is fully decomposable, I'm just dividing, and just getting to thinner things. So if I go infinitely, if I'm doing this subdivision infinitely many times, I will get arbitrary large thin rectangles subdividing, and by definition, this is what I call RS. I will get the set of, actually, sorry, the union over RS of the stable curves. At the intersection, I get a stable curve. So this is a good set that it's okay, but I'm left with the rest, and the rest is the union over P such that H of P is non-empty of the part of lambda which is inside, which is by definition H of P. So this is a countable union of sets which are a priori not so good. This is a good part, this is a bad part. If I'm drawing that, I have these stable curves, and then inside something which is bad, which something like H of P. So let's call this P naught. What I'm just doing is taking inverse image by the number of direct image by the number of iterates which correspond to P naught. So this will go to some Q naught. This Q naught by some number of iteration G of N naught. And then I will start subdividing horizontally this Q naught. And this is where I'm using this main restriction here. Because this restriction tells me that I'm not stuck. Because the P was not fully decomposable, the H of P was not empty, P is not good here, and so Q has to be good. So I'm able to subdivide now this in a horizontal way till I get some Q1 inside Q naught, for which the H of Q1, the corresponding thing, is non-empty. And then I can iterate back again. So what is the final picture to conclude? Is that I started with these good stable curves, and some piece like that which was not so good. But this I started to subdivide horizontally, and what I got is some nice piece of unstable curve, which are like that, and then some pieces which are not so good. But then I iterate forward again, and I get now piece of stable curves again. but then some piece not so good that I then iterate. Okay. So as you can guess, in a sense, the points which are not good, neither in positive or negative iteration, are the points which are at the intersection of this process. So at each step of the process, I get new good points, which will land in some positive or negative iteration on these two good sets. And taking the image, the intersection here, I will get the bad set, exceptional set, which are bad in both positive or negative direction. And this construction allows to show that this set of points, the bad set, has a dimension which is strictly smaller than the dimensions of the initial horseshoe. So in a sense, this bad set is a small set, a thin set, and so we are not able to understand much of the dynamics on this set, but in a sense, it's not too important because this is a thin set. Okay, I've been too long. Thank you. I'm cheating a little bit here in I need this in a slightly quantitative way, okay, that I did not have time to go into. I mean, I really want this, but I want this in a kind of constructive way. There is the question of making an induction and getting by smaller and smaller size. So it's really a quantitative version of this that you want. But it's not very far from this, I mean.
Let's